Hi, welcome to iEPCI Tech Talks, where experts from around the company take you on an immersive journey into the various industry topics from equipment to processes, covering common trends and what's next. I'm Charlie Weekly, and today we're going to talk about iEPCI, or our integrated approach to subsea projects. We're offering a new generation of comprehensive solutions that unlock oil and gas faster. We're doing this through our skills, through our innovative technologies, and it's giving us the ability to help our clients lower cost and accelerate schedule. And we're doing this through integrated project execution with full field subsea solutions, as you'll see in the coming slides. Before we get into some of those details though, let's set some background on what a traditional project can and oftentimes looks like. What you'll see here on the bottom of the screen is actually a traditional execution process. And when you notice, we'll have the subsea system in our background with the various colors tying into the various contracts or scopes of work on the bottom of the screen. Oftentimes an operator will start with a conventional FEED study where they use maybe a third-party engineering house to do the engineering work to come up with the field concept. Then they will go out and give various contractors different scopes of work to bid on. So you can see here in the drill center, we've got the hardware, which is in red, the subsea hardware. We've got in blue up here, this is the riser and flow line scope. Sometimes the umbilicals are part of that and sometimes they're not. You'll notice in the background we've got the green umbilical, and then oftentimes the installation contract is a whole separate contract. And it's actually represented here in yellow in the process. And each one of these contracts is typically going to be a different supplier. There's going to be external interfaces between these contracts that the operator has to manage. And so it definitely makes for a potentially cumbersome execution process with a lot of involvement through a fairly large project team by the client. And what we're looking at here today is our approach to integrated projects. This is where we're taking all those various subsea work scopes and integrating them into a single execution project. Not only are we taking all of the equipment and putting it all in the same scope, we're also in many cases getting involved much earlier in the process, where we can take our standard designs, our integrated solutions, which doesn't just include the hardware but also the installation vessels, and we're actually getting involved in the FEED stage and helping the client come up with a field design that is the most optimal from either a CapEx, OpEx, or both kind of standpoint. A little bit more detail on what this process looks like. As I mentioned before, on the far left of the screen, you can see we've got our iFEED, or our integrated approach to architecture design. And this is again where we take our standard building blocks, or even our client-specific building blocks if it's a client we've worked with before and they want to continue using the same equipment. We're able to integrate that into some field designs and look at different ways to lay out a field to try to unlock the maximum value up front. Then we've got our iEPCI, our integrated approach to execution, and this is where we have one project team managing the complete work scope from the well to the platform or the facility. And then beyond that, when you look beyond installation, now we're looking at the life of the field or operation management, and we've got products and services that we can offer that will help the operator maximize the use and the performance of the equipment over time, over the life of the field. And if the operator is fortunate, this can be a 10, 15 year, 20 year timeline, even longer, if the operator is getting enough return on the investment from the reservoir. What we see above at the top that we just talked about, it's more of maybe the physical aspects of what's happening. What we see here at the bottom of the screen is our digital platform, which is really the backbone behind these physical processes that we go through. And what you'll notice is over on the far left, we'll start there, we've got our Subsea Studio program. And Subsea Studio is our new platform where we can go in and do design work on paper through a CAD program. We can look at the field from like a building block level, from an actual 3D as-built kind of state, and look at multiple concepts very quickly and help the operator figure out what is the best concept, both from what the field looks like, what the reservoir is providing through flow assurance, all the way to which one's going to take the most time to install offshore, which one's going to be the easiest to operate in terms of operational flexibility, and all of these decisions can be weighed with the operator to figure out what the best course of action is for that project. We've also got our integrated, or kind of our smart approach to execution. This is both looking at what we call digital vessel, where we're actually making ways for us to actually do a lot of remote inspections, remote planning with our vessels, making operations more efficient on the vessel. We've also got our smart spool-based process where we're getting more efficient in terms of how we're managing data and running things like pipe through our shop, through our spool base to be more efficient and give the operator more real-time feedback on how execution is going. And then the last part of this, which I'll step out of the way, this is really our asset visualization process where we actually help the operator manage their product, maintain their product. We can help them schedule work to be done in the field, get our equipment, our people mobilized, the tooling needed to support the field so that it's very quick and it's also seamless in terms of us being prepared to support the client when the client needs the support. Okay. We're really looking at managing, again, the complete work scope. So this is, again, going back to things like subsea hardware, SURF, like risers and flow lines, umbilicals. These things are typically done by different suppliers, different contracts, heavy management by the operator. And what we're looking to do is really integrate that whole thing, work with the client, and actually have one integrated project to execute. And there are operators all over the world, projects all over the world that have benefited from this iEPCI approach to execution. And we'll talk about a few of those projects here in just a minute. The result of doing this integrated approach to project execution has been cost savings for the client. This is both in reducing potentially the complexity of the design, the size of the project team, both on the client side and also on our side, on the supplier side. We've also got optimized subsea architectures. This speaks again to being able to use Subsea Studio in the iFeed stage, where we can go in and look at a lot of different concepts very quickly, make sure that the optimal subsea solution is being selected for the project before you go into execution. Reduce contractual risks. This is another one that's very important because now instead of having all these different contracts to manage and one that's dependent on the other in terms of schedule, when you have it all under one roof with one solution or one supplier, those contractual risks, if you will, are eliminated between these various subsea contracts, and they're now all under one roof, and there's now one contract with the client that can be managed kind of holistically. And then managing the field performance over time. Again, that speaks to that ILOF or life of field support that we can offer, and it's very effective, especially with our standard solutions that we've developed with our clients over the last few years. So we're the only one right now in the industry as a supplier that can offer full integrated subsea execution or subsea projects. When you look at it, you look at the cost of a typical subsea development, 34% roughly of that cost of developing that field is in the subsea system. So it's one of the largest components of the cost of the project. And again, where we can offer value to our clients is in this space, and it's not an insignificant amount of value that can be provided by cutting or reducing the cost associated with this. I mentioned earlier the iEPCI projects that we've been awarded to date. There have been 22 around the world that have been awarded to TechnipFMC. And one thing I just want to point out, as you look across this map, and I'll move around here in a second, you can see there's a whole lot of different projects in different parts of the world. The key things are these customers are very different across. There's a wide variety of customers, from international oil companies to small local operators to global operators, the majors, the independents. We've done iEPCI work with the majority of them. And there's also the size of the project itself. So this isn't just exclusive to very, very large greenfield developments, but even smaller brownfield developments where there may not be as much hardware, but you may also the operator may have to work with a smaller margin in terms of the cost of the development. And there's real value to be found here, both oftentimes in not just the cost of the project, but how quickly it can be turned around and ultimately installed and the operator help get first oil. You can see there's a variety of projects. We've got a number of them in the Gulf of Mexico, as you can see here, across in the Gulf. And then you look across also into Europe and West Africa and also Asia Pacific. So like I said, it's a global phenomenon that's happening all over the world and continues to offer value to our clients and will going forward. Just some quick highlights on some of the benefits, and some of these we've already talked through, but when you look at it from maybe a technical standpoint, having integrated engineering team and processes. So this is where, again, instead of having an umbilical supplier, a hardware supplier, a riser flow line surface supplier, and an installation contractor, when you bring all those together, you can hone in on kind of standard practices, both from an engineering and installation standpoint. You also would obviously reduce interfaces, so there's no longer these external interfaces between these various contracts or various work scopes that have to be managed by the client. There's one now client interface that can be managed as an integrated team, and we and the client can speak together holistically about the subsea development and the subsea system itself and the execution as it goes forward. There's also the ability to bring the installation team in much earlier in the process. Traditionally, in a traditional execution that we saw earlier in the presentation, a lot of times the installation contractor is not selected until well after the hardware supplier is selected. And so oftentimes the installation contractor does not get to provide their input until very late in the process. And sometimes that actually holds up the hardware supplier's ability to finalize designs, or the design may be finalized and then it becomes much more difficult for the supplier to change the design to make it more friendly, installation friendly for the installation contractor. When you talk about a whole team working together, we bring the installation contractor in right up front. In many cases, especially if this is standard equipment, the interfaces have already been designed. They've already been worked out through either previous projects as a project team, through our standard design efforts that are ongoing with our product management organization. And then if there are new interfaces, again, they're worked out very, very early in the process, so there are no surprises when you get further down in the process. And then also, as you work as a collective team, project management, engineering across the whole system, the supply chain, we can make real-time decisions about things that maybe this product needs to move over here, or this schedule needs to shift slightly. We need to reprioritize whether the inline structure goes first in terms of fabrication or the manifold. These things can be made real time as a full project team, and that helps, again, reduce the schedule uncertainty. And then just looking at that commercial schedule aspect of it too, you think about it when you have a traditional contract with multiple suppliers, each one is going to quote a certain delivery timeline. They're typically going to put float in that schedule, which is really just baking in a little extra time to give them the ability to help ensure that they'll meet their delivery requirements. And these contract floats, especially when you go, one contractor needs equipment from this one, and then they can do their part and it goes and goes, these floats can really add up and really blow out a project schedule. When you're looking at the full scope, then you can actually eliminate those floats, and you can actually look at the project holistically and really only have a bit of float associated with the entire scope, instead of having these individual floats that, again, can affect schedule. You can also make for a more streamlined team. When you look at maybe the traditional hardware scope, or let's say you have a manifold team, and then on the SURF side you would have an inline structure team. We've done a lot of work as TechTalk now as one kind of holistic supplier of subsea equipment. We've now integrated those teams, and we've taken a lot of the learnings and the technology and the expertise across inline structures and in drill center structures like manifolds, and we've really honed in on best practices, standard interfaces, and this goes to also jumpers and connectors and things like that. So done a lot of work in those spaces and really eliminating additional roles that don't necessarily need to be there. You also look at delivery risk. I mentioned that last one there. This is really shifting the risk of delivery from the client to the supplier. And the reason why I say that is, if you take a hardware supplier, historically is going to be basically X works in terms of their delivery. So they're just responsible for building the product and then giving it to the client, and the client then gives it to the installation contractor to go offshore. When we're providing an iEPCI type approach to execution, then we are responsible for delivery of the equipment to the seabed. And that means that we're responsible contractually and with the schedule to ensure that everything, the hardware, in some cases the umbilical and the risers and flow lines, are all on the vessel, installed on schedule. And so that shifts that delivery risk from the client to the supplier like TechTalk. So this was a quick overview of iEPCI. Barely touched on iFeed and iLoft, but make sure to check out the deep dives that kind of accompany this or go on beyond this, and to learn more information about it and about TechTalk and some of the services that we can offer and have been offering our clients.